Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Hakeem Jeffries of New York. He's a member of the Judiciary Committee. Congressman, thanks for coming in to the Situation Room. I want to get to the Michael Cohen developments in a moment, but let's start with the Russia investigation. In your view, how important is the White House counsel Don McGahn's testimony now? 30 hours answering questions before Robert Mueller's team.
Well, it's extraordinary that the White House counsel would spend 30 hours with Mueller's team, obviously going through in painstaking detail the events that have taken place throughout the Trump administration, presumably focused a lot on whether there was efforts to obstruct justice connected to the firing of James Comey, the withholding of information, the decision to urge others to go easy, what communications may have taken place with the Department of Justice with or beyond Jeff Sessions. So there's an amount of information that Don McGahn was in a position to be able to provide that on its own may not be incriminating, but could be a piece to the puzzle of the conspiracy that may have existed between the Trump campaign and Russia to sell out our democracy, or the obstruction of justice that may have taken place thereafter.
Because President Trump says he approved of this Q&A session that McGahn gave Robert Mueller's team. How transparent, how open do you think McGahn was with the Mueller team?
Well, I think when you spend 30 hours with the Mueller team, it's clear that Don McGahn, who's a lawyer, well-respected in this town, understands that the worst thing that he could have done was to go into those conversations and not provide all of the information as truthfully as possible, because that could subject him to criminal jeopardy, and he clearly doesn't want to go down that pathway. And so this is just another example of how meticulously the Mueller team is pursuing this investigation to get to the bottom of what took place. Eventually, they'll prepare a report to the Department of Justice, to the Congress, to the American people.
What does it tell you, Congressman, that the president now is comparing the Mueller investigation to McCarthyism, and he's rejecting the idea that his own White House counsel, and I'm quoting the President of the United States right now, is a John Dean-type rat?
Well, the president is unhinged, clearly concerned, out of control, in the midst of a meltdown. Any other administration, we would call this extraordinary. In the Trump administration, we call it Monday. This is behavior that should shock the conscience of the American people, that an individual who should be focused on dealing with the wage stagnation, for instance, that's affecting the middle class, and the fact that the Trump economy is benefiting the privileged few, not everyday Americans, but instead he's attacking other fellow Americans, clearly because he's concerned with what may be uncovered by the Mueller investigation and the other parallel investigations that are taking place.
In the midst of all of this, now the president is telling Reuters in this new interview today that he would consider lifting U.S. sanctions against Russia if the Russians cooperated with the U.S. in Ukraine and Syria. Your reaction?
Well, what I don't understand with this particular president is why he continues to try to play footsie with Vladimir Putin in Russia and refuses to acknowledge the fact that, one, they attacked our democracy with respect to the 2016 election and continue to do so, as opposed to taking steps to try to cozy up with them. At the same time, he attacks our allies in Mexico and Australia, the European Union, NATO, Britain, Germany, France, Canada, so on and so forth. Something's very wrong with this individual who's sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
And give me your reaction to the president's statements earlier today on Twitter that that Robert Mueller, the special counsel, is disgraced and discredited, that his team is a bunch of thugs. There you see it right there, disgraced and discredited Bob Mueller, the way he's speaking about Mueller.
Well, it's a shameful statement, and unfortunately what we've seen from my colleagues in the House of Representatives on the Republican side is that they refuse to take steps to rein in this president without recognizing that we are separate and co-equal branch of government in the House. We don't work for Donald Trump, we work for the American people, and they are enabling this type of behavior when they have refused to go at it aggressively, and that's shameful.
One final question. How worried should the president be about his former fixer and lawyer, Michael Cohen, cooperating?
Well, he should be very concerned, because Michael Cohen is someone who's obviously closely affiliated with Donald Trump and all of his business shenanigans that have taken place for decades, and will be in a position to reveal that information to the federal prosecutors in Manhattan, that could spell trouble for Donald Trump.
Between Michael Cohen potentially cooperating, Don McGahn already cooperating. We'll see where all of that leads. Congressman, thanks as usual for
Thank you,
joining
Will.
us. Hakeem Jeffries of New York.